So, last week, I came out with a video on King of the Hill and how an episode from Season 4 was a great demonstration of human behavior during times of paranoia. And I was invited by MTNTC in the comments section to cover another specific episode. So that's exactly what we're going to be doing. In this video from the Borealis company, we're going to take a look at King of the Hill once again, and Season 4 once again, but this time we're looking specifically at Season 4, Episode 5, Aisle 8A.
Mr. Hill, I just got my first period. No!
I'm going to give you a quick summary of the episode first, and then build a layout of the video so you've got a pretty good look at the setup. Aisle 8A is the episode where Con and Min Supernusifone leave on a business trip and have the Hills watch Connie. Little do they, and frankly anybody else know, and much to Hank's horror, and frankly Connie's horror, that this is also the weekend where Connie gets her first period. Now that you know that, I think it's also important to note that I'm a male who has no intention of having kids anytime soon in the future. So by that logic, the characters I relate to the most is a toss-up between Bill and Boomhauer. Maybe more Bill than Boomhauer. So I decided to study some voices and opinions of others on this episode via Reddit. Yes, I found a post completely devoted to just this episode that I'll leave a link to in the description, and focus on a more universal theme from this episode that could allow me to provide a more well-informed view on this story. And I realized when I was watching it again that magic theme is expectation. So, this video is going to be split into 3 sections on how the episode analyzes and demonstrates expectation, starting with expectations in regards to the parents. I think aside from the sex talk and maybe a divorce talk as an honorable mention, the puberty talk is the most uncomfortable talk a parent can have with their kid. And that's probably why, aside from the biological part, it's usually in the same talk as the sex talk. Why have 2 when you can knock them out in one go? But this is where an unspoken expectation comes in, and why out of everybody to discover it first, it's funny because it's Hank, a male who's not a member of the family. It's not expected of him to really do anything. We see this when Con comes back, ready to kick his ass. We see this when Peggy tells Hank that it's no longer his concern when she comes back. And we even see this with Hank himself when he's so unsure of what to do that he takes Connie, wrapped up in a blanket, to a section of the go-to Megalomart, the titular Aisle 8A, which is uncharted territory to him. And we can tack on some other facets of expectation here, like how there's gotta be some cultural expectations between America and Laos as an undercurrent, or how Hank and Con's tense disagreements in the past, and maybe to a lesser extent Peggy and Min's passive-aggressive ones, establishes an expectation of conflict on a level that wouldn't exist with anyone else in the neighborhood. But in a lot of ways, that's also why thematically it has to be Bobby and Connie as the kids, the offspring of Hank and Con, instead of Joseph and Connie, or Bobby and a girl he's interested in from school. It's that expectation of conflict that makes the story engaging and as a result funny. It's also why, in a lot of ways, it makes Hank more heroic. From a gender, a cultural, and a familial perspective, this is not Hank's problem. But because he's the only adult in the moment, he chooses to step up and be there for his neighbor's daughter, which, in my opinion, makes him kind of a heroic character and makes him one of my favorite dads in animation, up there with Bob Belcher and Randy Marsh. Obviously not for the same reasons, but it puts him up there. In addition to expectations that parents assume they have from society for their children to be educated on this, there's also, I think, an expectation that exists for parents who have lived it to best prepare the kids for this. That's why Peggy is so adamant on giving Hank the boot. How could he provide the right expectations if he's never and will never live what Connie's living for the first time? Again, all the more proof that Hank really steps up to the plate when he has to. But it also leads me to the second point of the video, expectations in regards to the children. In addition to the expectations from the parents, there's something to be said about the expectations that the kids now have to carry with the parents' influence. The parents immediately and maybe correctly assume that puberty means hormones, and hormones mean something else. So they try to put boundaries around Bobby and Connie and what they can and cannot do when they're around each other, which is very minimal, depending on which pair of parents you talk to. However, the episode ends with just a talk between the two kids and what their relationship means going forward. And unfortunately, the conversation is too long to show on YouTube before the algorithm unleashes the wrath of whatever god you believe in on me. So I'll give you the summary, but I still strongly advise you check it out because it's a wonderful combination of funny, charming, and intelligent. But it's King of the Hill. At this point, you already know that. So Connie and Bobby are finally talking to each other, and they discuss how they're not supposed to see each other because Bobby's only going to want one thing. But neither the Supernusophones nor the Hills tell them that it's sex. But they use their kid logic, let's call it, to reach the conclusion that they just won't see each other during select days of the month. And they'll continue their relationship like nothing's changed out of those specific days. To use Connie's logic, she would only be a woman for 4 days out of the month. And to use Bobby's logic, she is so smart and capable that she'll figure out a way to manage it down to just 2 days out of the month. And I love how they handle that change for so many reasons. Firstly, the kids trump the expectations of the parents in quiet rebellion. So I'm sure there's got to be another archetype out there that I'm not thinking of, but the rebel archetype is probably the go-to counter-argument to expectations, because it's a deliberate contrast. But Bobby and Connie rebel in a way that's not destructive, and technically against the expectations of the parents' perceptions of a rebellious kid. They're going off of what society tells them is going to happen with their kids at this age. And now, granted, that's well informed and it's probably gonna happen. And maybe you combine that with falsified memories of how the parents were at that age, and that's what scares them into thinking that their kids are going to do what's naturally going to happen. But at the same time, they become so preoccupied on the expectations of puberty that by the time it's thrusted on people who don't know anything about puberty, let alone the experience of puberty, it's not really falling on deaf ears, but naive minds who don't know what's in store, or how to handle it. They just know that things are changing, and they're unsure of what or how that'll happen. But because of this, rebellious behavior doesn't always mean 7 minutes in heaven. It can lead to that, which is why I think the parents aren't villains in this episode, they're just antagonists. But for now, it can lead to a compromise where both partners agree to allot a designated amount of time to give one of their partners space due to what's going on with them and their own independent life, and still develop autonomy, but create a evolving dynamic relationship, which is not only very mature for these kids, but I think shows that they are more emotionally intelligent than any of the characters in the show, and frankly, most of the audience most of the time gives them credit for. Now, I really like the idea of my video essays not only showing you why a certain story works, but how you can use those themes and topics for your own life. To be more on the nose about it, here's how you can use expectations in a more positive way for your life in the future. Now, this is not a diagnosis for or a definite answer for everyday life, but if you find value in it and you find a way to better your own life, go for it. Firstly, expectations are internal. Even on a societal level, they're translated internally. It's a projection of what that person thinks should happen. Sometimes it's for negative reasons and has negative consequences, but in some cases, like in King of the Hill, it exists because it works, it's reliable, and it's with good intentions for the benefit of other people that you love. When you struggle with what to do, expectations can potentially act as a template of tried and true methods. Secondly, you can be a non-destructive rebel. That's part of finding your autonomy. Now, that doesn't mean sticking it to the man. If anything, it just means to recognize the value of an expectation and to tailor it based on your given situation. Bobby and Connie don't and can't really rebel against their parents, nor do they really want to in this episode. There are other episodes where that's not the case, but in Aisle 8A specifically, that's not the case. But even though rebel has a certain connotation to it, and rightfully so, think of non-destructive rebellion as potentially just good compromise. As long as you recognize that expectations are there for a reason, but you can use it to grow and design your own solution, in my opinion, that's where the value is. But, of course, take it with a grain of salt and take it as insight, not advice. Everybody's different. But let me know in the comments below, what do you think of expectations? Are they justified in some moments and excessive in others? Should they always be enforced? Also, let me know what you want to see from this channel in the future. This video happened because of a recommendation, which, by the way, thank you for that. I was actually really excited to review and revisit this episode again. And even though it is my forte, I'd love to explore stories outside of film and television. I would love to explore athletes and art and novels and even interior design, anything that tells a story. Don't be scared to let me know. And also, don't be scared to like and subscribe for more topics on storytelling.
First trash day.
Oh!
Ha ha! Big bad can.